Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today who's going to give us some really unique insights into AI and some historical background into all this that you may have not received before. Neil Sahota was born in New York and grew up there until his father took a job in California. Then the 7-year-old boy moved to Southern California. After an initial culture shock, Neil learned to adopt the best of both New York and California cultures. He was the black sheep of the family. However, being so different gave Neil the early recognition that people have different perspectives, thought processes, and motivations. This would be the fuel of Neil's future career as the person who would find and connect those hidden dots and build collaborative coalitions, ecosystems, and, if you will, to maximize the value of those hidden data dots. Originally, Neil had a strong career path into politics through helping people get elected to local, state, and national offices since he was a junior in high school. However, by his second year of college, he realized he wasn't evil enough to be a politician. So he pivoted into management consulting and helped global Fortune 500 companies with their business strategy. Never content to think inside the box, Neil solved problems at an industry and sector level. Through his work, he developed a lot of intellectual capital. Becoming a recognized thought leader, he was sought after to join IBM Watson's team. Here, Neil helped pioneer the current artificial intelligence wave that we are currently in today. Today, enterprises and government agencies like the United Nations actively seek his advice, and he sits on the board of several companies. Neil is an IBM Master Inventor, United Nations Artificial Intelligence Advisor, and faculty at UC Irvine, and author of Own the AI Revolution. With 20-plus years of business experience, he works with organizations to create next-generation products, solutions powered by emerging technology. Beyond his career, Neil's mission in life is to leave the world at least as good, as if not better, than he found it. That is why he volunteers his time to nonprofits and champions social good. Currently, he is helping the Zero Abuse Project to prevent child sexual abuse, as well as a Planet Home, which engages youth culture in sustainability initiatives. Neil currently lives in Southern California, but the whole world is his office. Neil Sahota, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am, Jim. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
No, same here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you share what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
My current passion is AI for good. I'm very big about social impact, and I look nothing wrong with making money, but we always taught, well, either make money or you help people, but we can do both. So I'm really trying to help champion the mindset of social enterprise and social entrepreneurship with AI.
Well, and as you're saying that, and because of the industry that I'm in with customer care and contact centers and the whole global nature of that particular industry and AI coming into the world at an increasing rate, some of the AI being forced into play right now, going through this global pandemic, that maybe shouldn't be. We need to get into that. But there is a whole lot of fear associated with AI. And you actually really don't even introduce artificial intelligence as a concept and define it in the book until chapter 6. Why did you wait so long?
Jim, it was actually because of all the fear concerns. One of the reasons I wrote the book was the stuff out there was either way too technical for business folks, or it was a lot of fear mongering, right? They dumped a whole host of issues at people's doorsteps with no hope, no outlet, nothing they're able to do. And so I wanted to tee up the conversation and get people into the right mindset, understand that, look, this whole thing is an evolution and this is a tool for us to use. It's not here to kill us off or to replace us, that we as the people actually hold the power.
But you do talk about something that is evolutionary in nature, talking about society 5.0. What is that?
Well, this actually started with in Japan, but there's this whole idea that our society is evolving. So we've gone through different revolutions, the formation of civilization. But you think about what AI is actually bringing to the table. It's going to change the way we do financial services, the way we do healthcare, the way we do education. Even the way we pick up trash. That where we now focus our time and the things that we actually do, and where we add value, is going to transform. And while everyone talks about like the automation side, what we're finding is AI is actually helping to unlock our own humanity, right? That we're actually taking more time to explore ourselves, be more creative, more imaginative. And that's an interesting shift where more of the tedious work will fall onto the machines, more of the creative work will fall onto us.
Well, but even those, as you're saying that, and you and I had a discussion off mic that I think we need to bring on board, because in the introduction to your book, Stephen Ibaraki talks about a separation or a split in humanity is what he refers to it as. And you and I talked about this a little bit, and I think it's important. And you had mentioned something about some work that you're doing called or referenced, to being the equality gap. What is the equality gap? And tell us about this, humanity possibility splitting.
Well, I think we have a big challenge on a global scale that we're seeing the people who have things and the people that don't have things is growing, that divide. And unfortunately, technology seems to be an accelerator for it. And so when it comes to AI, there's a huge concern that it'll widen that gap, that you'll have a bunch of people that they can afford the high-speed internet, they can afford the tools and the iPads and stuff like that, where they can actually learn and use the technology and get great jobs, where they'll have a group of people that don't have that infrastructure or access to equipment that they won't actually learn these things or be able to even use it. We're already seeing now that there's experimental surgery where they can actually restore vision with digital cameras that should transmit it into the brain. And things like where if you lose like a hand, they can replace it with a robotic arm where the AI can read your muscle and tendon motions. And that's great, restoring mobility, but is that going to be available for everybody? Will only be the people that can afford to get it? So it's not just a question of jobs and wealth, but even things like access to healthcare and even maybe food.
So as I start thinking about that, and you start talking about the whole political aspects of, hey, let's advance the economy of tomorrow, for example. But then we have all of these social issues because of this gap and this separation. So, to me, it's like a catch-22 scenario. So how are you seeing a way forward in all this?
It's not easy. We have to try and ensure that the infrastructure is there for everybody. The United Nations is actually going to launch in their General Assembly meeting coming up in September an initiative called Connectivity 2030. And the goal with that is to try and give everyone, especially the underserved populations of the world, access to high-speed internet, stable high-speed internet, devices, simple devices, so that they can at least use the technology. Because we've seen it even with kids as young as 2, they grow up in a household with like a tablet, they get really good at it. They learn things, they may not fully understand them, but they know how to open apps, do things, play videos, right? Think the leg up that child's going to have as they continue their education and develop their career versus the child that doesn't have it and may not see a tablet until they're 10.
Well, as I start thinking about that, I also start, looking at you talk about the generational aspects, you talk about the improving of technologies, is that there are different types and qualities of technologies that exist today, especially when you start talking about AI, and you talk a little bit about the democratization of AI, but we're a long way off from that. So how long do you think we're going to have to struggle with a lot of bad AI out there before it gets really good in a general sense?
I hope not that long, but I think it's going to take it's going to take 5 to 7 years to kind of work through the system that way. Unfortunately, there is a lot of hype around AI. You have a lot of people that are riding the coattails and not really using it. Because they're trying to raise money, sell products, but there's actually a lot of good work out there. But a lot of the real AI stuff is like underneath the covers, right? It's most people don't see it directly, and so because they don't experience it, they don't know it. But I think that's changing. My experience building out these AI ecosystems, right? The really innovative and even the most disruptive ideas are actually coming from the startups. It's not so much the big companies. It's the startups are coming in and say like, hey, there's a whole new way of doing this. And as more and more of these things come to the forefront and are kind of in the consumer's face, I think that's when you'll start seeing this shift happen and all the bad stuff and all the hype stuff get pushed out.
Well, even as you're saying that, I start thinking about some of the things that I've read in regards to the people who are out there and having these startups and doing the programming and the coding and creating of all these different products. And there's a very clear separation between, for example, guys, it is very gender split. Guys do certain things and they want to create certain things. And the ladies do something that is different. And more women are creating technologies that do help humanity. They align with what you were talking about and what's important, AI for good. So do you see that type of separation when you start looking at all these startups and companies that are bringing some of these, societal impacting solutions to the forefront?
I do. I mean, we're all kind of shaped by our experience and our interests, but you're absolutely right. I mean, women tend to be way more nurturing. We saw this explosion of like AI chatbots, and a lot of it was for like customer service, these other things. But some of the more human element ones, or the ones that were like targeting things that people weren't thinking about, were actually developed by women. Like there's one called Rainbow, and it was actually started as an outlet for abused women. So women that were suffering under domestic violence, and it was like, they had no outlet and no one to talk to that they could at least get some information, feel like they're being heard, and hopefully encourage them to seek help. I hate to say it, if you're in a room with 5, well-adjusted men, smart technologists, they would probably never think of that, right? It's just not something that would naturally come to us.
So if we are looking at also the leadership that is currently transforming in the entire global scene, even before kids couldn't go on campus anymore, you even looked at the graduation rates, being more women than males, and you look at all this societal shift occurring in more mature countries, and do you see that having an impact in how we're going to be leveraging some of these tools? And for example, this going back to the whole democratization piece, I mean, do you see that making an impact?
I think it's going to make a tremendous impact. It's not just that we're getting the women's perspective and some of the more human elements. I think diversity and inclusion is actually incredibly important. All right, and we all see things very differently, and we all have different experiences, different ideas, and we have to bring that to the table. With right now the Black Lives Matter and some of the peaceful protests around racial equality and racial justice. A lot of people have actually been asking me, like, can we use AI to do anything about this? And it's like, well, here's the interesting thing. If people have tried this in the past, right? Like, not to pick on Google, but they created a hate speech detector, but it turned out to be racist, right? And so much of AI is about how we actually train the machine. And if we don't have those diverse and inclusive perspectives at the table, it's really hard to do. The UN has really gung-ho about having AI robot judges, improve access to justice, reduce corruption. Very, very great, very much needed. We have a wealth of data in the US court systems, but when we teach the AI bad thing, would the AI learn the implicit bias out of the court system? The answer is yes, right? If you just look at some of these cases where you got two people, they're the same age, same type of occupation, or maybe they're both students, it's going to see all these things, but say like this guy got 6 months of jail and this guy got 10 years. There's something different about them. Unfortunately, one of the most outstanding things is ethnicity. And so all we're going to wind up doing is teaching the AI those bad habits unless we can find a way to strip out implicit bias.
Well, it's kind of funny that you say that. For me, this is one of the things that I always struggle with when people talk about and asking the question, are you racist? And from my, thinking about what you just talked about, implicit bias, I'm like, well, we all are. Everyone is.
We all are, yeah.
I mean, this is just the way we wired it. It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't, it's irrelevant. I mean, we all, because we're creatures that are focused in at the very basic level on survival, anybody who's different from us, we now have a bias against because we don't know if they're going to kill us or if they're going to help us.
Think about it, right? It's not like it's all bad, but if you just say, hey, I was talking to an engineer, everyone has their picture of what an engineer is like in their mind, right? Right? Maybe they're good at math, maybe they wear glasses, but it's just so intrinsic to us. How in the world do we find that and strip it out to teach the machine, right?
I think that's going to be one of the most, talking about the democratization component. And also when you start talking about the customer experience component, if we start allowing the AI to handle more of the interaction from the point of education to sell or, the different transactional processes, I think we're going to run a huge risk like that if we don't keep the bots in check.
Very true, but this is why diversity and inclusion is so critical to training the AI systems. Right? This isn't just, hey, it's a nicety or whatever. We need that broad set of perspectives to help us understand this could be interpreted this way, or this appears to be happening this way, or this seems very stereotypical. Right? I alone am not going to get it, and I with two of my buddies may not get it either. If you bring the right collection of people together, it's actually amazing what you can actually pull off.
I think that's critically important to note because it goes back to, I did some research on artificial intelligence and automated systems from a knowledge management perspective in customer care operations, as well as from the chatbot and servicing component, and found three very distinctive generations of technology. And when you start looking at how the ability for that technology to respond to the customer with a correct answer, it varies widely. I mean, it's quite significant. And I don't think that's what people understand. They think, well, they should all have the same level of quality of response and to be able to handle the iteration and understand what I'm saying and reply back. And that's just not the case.
Like it's a challenge, right? It's not an insurmountable challenge, but I think that's one of the key things. People, right, when they try and build an AI solution, they always run to two challenges. One is around the data. Do I have the data? Do I have enough of the data? But is the data good? Is the data biased? Right. The second is actually the training. Right. AI is not a magic bullet. It doesn't just come out knowing things. You actually have to teach it. And yeah, you tap into the data to do that, but it still needs those human coaches to shepherd along. And think of it this way: an AI is like a 3-year-old kid when it starts doing something new, right? You give it, we call the ground truth, some rules on how to make decisions, and you let it try stuff. Here's some data, here's a question, what do you think the answer is? Right? Great, that's right, give it another question. Okay, that's wrong, should have been. And so you go through this iterative process. So it goes from 3-year-old to PhD in a few weeks. But that's all contingent on, do we have the data? Is the data good? Is it reduced bias? And how good our teachers are.
Bot teachers are very critical in this entire process. So I talked about in the book, you didn't even define artificial intelligence until chapter 6. Well, we've been talking for a while. So I have to ask, Neil, what is artificial intelligence?
Very simply, AI is a machine, a system that can actually do a task that requires some level of cognition, meaning that there's not just an answer. You're not looking at a search engine. You're not following like a path of a decision tree. You actually have to think about something and make like a judgment call on it, right? And the secret sauce with AI is that it can actually try and answer questions we don't know the answers to.
Well, as you're talking about that, I started going back to that whole thing that we were talking about in regards to fear and paranoia and there are a whole lot of the unknowns around AI. What's one of the wildest things you've heard about people's misconceptions of AI?
Aside from the Terminator and all that stuff, I actually had someone once tell me that AI is already conscious, and it's not that we're living in the Matrix or a simulation. It's like we are actually all robots, AI robots, and don't realize it. There's AI overlord that has tricked us as AI robots into thinking we're human.
We're beyond Matrix, right?
Way beyond Matrix.
Okay, so when I look at that splitting of humanity component, and I think about leveraging AI to that customer experience and it being more vital, do you see a time by which we'll have a more segmented type of customer get served by different types of companies because of the sophistication of AI? Think about this. We're not talking about, like, for example, cosmetics, right? You have your cosmetics that are at the lower end and the top end. I mean, we're not talking about that differentiated product. I'm talking about a particular product has the servicing component around it, maybe even product selection component around it. And now, because of that splitting of society, I'm now catering and marketing to these people in a different way. So in other words, my persona is more defined and broken down. Is AI going to help to define that better and us service better?
Yeah, yes, it is. I mean, it's already starting to help with the micro-segmentation, but it's actually believed that probably within the next 10 years, we'll be able to target people at an individual level through psychographics and neurolinguistics. So we always talk about the demographic information, and we know their purchasing history and some other things. But with AI tools that are already out there, people are deconstructing your personality, your behavior patterns. They can figure out your interests, your hobbies, even your political party, right? And then you marry that with neurolinguistics, where you have AI that is actually listening to what you're saying, the words you're using, even the tone of your voice, and drawing a lot of context to be able to tell, well, this person learns auditorily, this person learns like verbally. This person cares about the price and the fun factor, and this person cares about the features and the value proposition. And here's how you should actually talk to this person, focus on these parts of the product or this part of the service, and use these words for maximum resonance. I mean, it's like an ultimate communication coach. So it's like we're basically now we're at a point almost now where we can tell exactly who the person is inside and outside, and what their language is and how to speak in their language. That's
really powerful, because talking about the whole thinking aspect and speaking aspect, that is a puzzle that has been difficult for anybody to really master. And just when you think you have it right, somebody throws you a curveball. But you talk about a lot of the AI going undetected. You had mentioned that before. And also there's some parts of creating some of these AI solutions that is just inherent within decision-making processes. And we talk about groupthink issues. And you had mentioned 8 symptoms associated with groupthink and this detrimental mentality. And you talk about the illusions of vulnerability or invulnerability, unquestioned belief in the group's morality, rationalizing away warnings, stereotyping those who oppose the group, self-censorship of ideas, illusions of anonymity among group members, direct pressure to conform, and mind guards. How does AI actually help prevent these human pitfalls?
Great question, because this also ties in with some of the bias we were talking about early. We know that at least on some of these small scale levels, we can teach the AI to look for these bias, to be the contrarian in some cases, if you will, and be that, lack of a better word, logical kind of sounding board, so that, hey, let me do some negative testing. Let me kind of counter. Let me see if I can find a flaw or some data that disproves your hypotheses type of thing, because we tend not to be good at that. And if we're really good at what we do, we get used to working with the same people, that we all start thinking the same way. That's really hard to do. If you always had like an AI project team member and they were trained this way, then that AI would always be looking for the groupthink stuff and actually try and help break that pattern, because it's hard. It's hard to try and do that.
So then that leads me into the question, just the title of the book. I mean, sum it all up. It says, own the AI revolution. So how can an organization actually do that? Own the AI revolution.
If you'll indulge me for a moment, Jim, because there's a funny story behind the title. The original title was actually Uber Yourself Before You Were Kodak. And my publisher hated the title. I had tested it out. People thought it was really catchy, but my whole thing was to help people understand that this was a way for them to take a leap forward, right? That they don't have to be a passenger on this journey. They can actually be the driver, because it's a tool, it's an opportunity that we can all wield. And so a little back and forth with my publisher, because they wanted to call it AI or die, a little too negative for, I was trying to be optimistic about this. We still own the AI revolution, because I think a lot of people are afraid of the AI revolution we're currently in, and they're wondering what's going to happen. And it's like, you actually have the power to shape how we use AI, how this revolution goes. And I want people to feel empowered. I want them to feel enabled. I want to feel like that they understand they have more control than they actually realize.
Well, it goes back to your whole focus on the social good, right? AI for good. I mean, it fits, and I understand that. I'm glad definitely glad the AI or died it wasn't used. It definitely would have fueled the wrong fire.
Yep.
Talking about fueling fires, one of the things that we do on the show is we focus on quotes to help us get pointed in the right direction. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
I will share two that I think really resonate with me. I can't say they're mine, but the first is that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to take risks, right? I know it's tough, but I'm not saying just jump out of a plane without a parachute. Take calculated risks, but you're never going to go anywhere if you're just hoping that all this stuff will go by you, nothing bad will happen. That's not taking control of your destiny, and you're definitely along for the ride. And I'll be honest with you, people won't be looking out for you, right? I talked to a lot of companies, and that's what I hate to say they think. If you're not trying to disrupt yourself, someone is going to disrupt you. So, take some risks. The other I know is from Winston Churchill, where I believe he said, the pessimist looks at opportunities and finds problems. The optimist looks at problems and finds opportunities. And I think, again, this whole mindset I'm very big about is, if you get the right mindset, it opens doors. So do you want to be the person that's always just saying, like, finding the flaws and saying, oh, we can't do that, or we've never done that before? Or do you want to really be the person that says, you know what, if I really am worried about losing my job or anything like that, and right, not that that's the goal, but what are the opportunities then? Could you create something, do something, change a process, whatever it might be, to turn that problem into an opportunity for yourself?
Yeah, well, and as they say, when you look at the jobs of tomorrow, the jobs of tomorrow have not even been invented today. And I think AI is going to be a massive driver of a lot of that. That's for sure. And that's what they project.
Very, very true. Think about it. 10 years ago, we didn't have Uber or Lyft drivers. People weren't messing around with cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, right? Even social media marketers was just a fledgling field back then. So don't lose hope, right? There's going to be so many new jobs out in the future that you can't even conceive of yet today, but you have an opportunity to get ready.
That's for certain. Now, but talking about getting ready, sometimes we have to, have, some of those learning opportunities in order to put us in a right spot. You talked about taking risks. You talked about sometimes they weren't good ones. We talk about learning opportunities and getting over the hump. Is there a time there you have gotten over the hump that you can share?
There's a ton. Probably one of the biggest I'll say is that, after Watson had won the Jeopardy challenge and we're talking about what we're doing, I was fighting for kind of the ecosystem model, opening up the platform. There was another big conversation about who to target, right? Who do we engage to get people on board? And a lot of people said we have to go with the tech people, right? They know the technology, you have all these tech startups. And I was one fighting for we actually have to engage the business people, right? They understand the problems, they're on the ground. If we really want to build solutions, they're the people that need to be at the table with the technologists. I initially lost that fight, right? But I never gave up the fight. And, we ran into some problems. And finally, I kind of had an epiphany moment where I made the thing like, look, we're treading water at the moment. But think about it. If you lock 5 really amazing technologies, like the best technologists in the world in a room together, what are they going to think about, right? They're going to think about the cool things that they want to do, like self-driving cars and missions to Mars, right? Now imagine that you put in 5 of the world's smartest doctors in the room. What are they going to think about, right? Well, curing cancer, great. What if we put them together? Right, and that's when suddenly the light bulb kind of went on for people. Oh my God, he's right. Right? I don't know how many technologists are amazing lawyers or accountants, teachers or whoever, but if you really want to make that impact across every sector, every industry, it's that amalgam between business and technology. And that was thankfully a big hump I was able to overcome.
Well, I would dare to say what you started talking about is really that inclusion piece. I mean, kind of coming back the whole full circle thing. And how do you eliminate the bias? How do you create better solutions? How do you impact the humanity? It's, first of all, being aware that we're all, riddled with bias of all kinds of different measure and impact, without a doubt. And it's being able to overcome that. So when I start looking at own the AI, not AI or die, then I start thinking about some of the things that you were talking about, impacting humanity, the different types of technologies that are existing, the democratization of AI, the impact to the customer, the segmentation, the micro-segmentation. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that I could be thinking about from a targeting and a goal perspective. And so I have to ask you, is there one goal that you can actually share?
For AI?
For you?
Oh, for me. At the end of the day, I think, when you read my bio, my goal is to try and leave the world as good as, if not better than I found it. And I think AI is actually creating an interesting opportunity to do that. Not just in the tools that we can create to help fight climate change and try to end hunger, fight off poverty, but one of the interesting things that we're actually finding out is AI is giving us as people a chance to be more human. There's a project going on in Nairobi, Kenya right now called Loving AI. Probably not what everyone thinks. What they're trying to do is teach machines unconditional love, because the biggest illness in the world is actually loneliness. And at least before COVID, that was 40% of the population. And they went down this path, but to teach the machine, you have to be able to say, okay, what's this concept of unconditional love? Well, how do you define that, right? How is that different than regular love? And what are the different types of love? You have the love between a parent and a child, or between siblings, or between spouses. And so rather than just become this, hey, we're going to teach this chatbot to be an outlet for lonely people, became this really deep exploration into what it means to be human. And I think that's my one real goal is with AI. It's actually a chance for us to really explore the human experience.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Neil, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Neil Sahota, are you ready to hoedown?
Oh man, I don't know, but let's do it.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
It's really just a people problem, that it's tough for people to believe what machines can do and to create the buy-in because there's just so much resistance to change.
And what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Not to give up, but know when to fold. Focus on winning the war, not the battle.
And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I actually think it's because I'm able to see the perspective of other people. I can put myself in the shoes and I know what's going to click for them and what won't. And I focus on that rather than just what I like or what I think will work.
And what do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
It's really emotional intelligence. People have told me that I'm very empathetic, very personable, and they feel like, it's like a buddy conversation or having a beer rather than, okay, it's like a professor or lecture type of thing.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Own the AI Revolution on your show notes page as well.
I think other than my book, I recommend a book called Made to Stick. Fantastic book that helps explain how you actually create buy-in and resonance with people.
Chip and Dan Heath are the authors, and you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Neil Sahota. Okay, Neil, this is my last Hump Day Hold On question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25. You've been given the knowledge and skills that you have now, and you can take them back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
Great question. I'll be totally forthright. I would probably take my knowledge of who won the sports games, go back in time and make the right bets.
I can relate to that. I'd take back a few Powerball numbers, right?
I figure with all that money, I could probably move things much faster. So,
Neil Sahota, I had fun with you today. How can the Fast Leader Legion connect with you?
They can come to my website, neilsahota.com, or they can follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm very frequently posting and always looking to meet new people and hear new ideas.
Neil Sahota, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.